Okay, good afternoon, everyone. And today we were going to review Bhagavad Gita from chapter 1 to chapter 6. That's the first 1/3 of the entire book. And I believe it's covered Karma Yoga. And then next week, we are going to back to the Taoism study about the chapter 3 for the cultivation of life. And I do find some interest part related to cultivation of life and the Bhagavad Gita chapter 6. I will ask Sashi today. And then June 10th, 2 weeks from now, Sashi is going to continue our journey of Bhagavad Gita, and he's going to continue for chapter 7 and chapter 8, and then we're going to move forward. So today is Sashi's session, and then it's kind of free discussion. Share what do you learn on this one, and then ask any question about the Bhagavad Gita from chapter 1 to 6, and then so if you miss some of the chapter, and that's a good chance to catch up, and so you can continue. Thank you. Okay, Sashi, please.
Yeah, so we did chapters 1 through 6. I mean, I can give you a brief summary to brush up your memory on what this is about. It's a war. It's two cousins. You know, they're fighting for the kingdom. So the whole epic is called as Mahabharata. And it's a very wide ranging epic, and at some point the so-called good party and then the bad party has taken over the kingdom, and now the good party, which is the Arjuna, is the sort of one of the main people. I mean, he's not the king, but his older brother would be the king, but maybe he would be the king, I guess. He's fighting because a lot has happened where, you know, the so-called bad guys who have taken over the kingdom, the bad brothers. I mean, again, it is bad from the perspective of as you're reading the story, but there are times, there's so gray shades of these characters on how the Kauravas or Dhritarashtra is the brother, you know, the other guy, he's blind. And he's sort of mistreated because he's blind, effectively. But, you know, it's not quite mistreated, because the idea for a king to be physically, you know, properly available so that he can rule the kingdom properly. So they make his brother the king, younger brother, but then it goes, you know, he takes it back, the blind king. And then his son, who is not blind, Duryodhana, happens to be the main villain of this whole narrative. And then he has 100 other brothers, and, you know, there is kings who have allied with the bad force, if you will. And there's variety of things happen where, you know, the love interest or the wife of Arjuna in India back then, there used to be this thing called a Swayamvara, where the princess gets to pick her own husband among like 50 different people or kings and from different kingdoms would show up, and then she gets a chance to, you know, pick somebody from them. And turns out that Duryodhana was also there, and she kind of mocks him. She's kind of a playful young girl, Draupadi. So she mocks him, saying, "Oh, you know, because he kind of tumbles on some footstep or something," and then she just says, "Oh, you know, look at this blind kid whose father is blind," or something like that, right? Something to the effect that, you know, he's blind, just like his father, and that kind of irates Duryodhana a lot. So then further along, Duryodhana tricks the Arjuna and his brothers to join a play of, it's called as Dyut, but it's basically what is the equivalent here? I guess Ludo or something where they put their kingdoms at stake, and back then wife was considered as a property. So they put Draupadi as a stake, just because the other party says, hey, you've lost your kingdom, you've lost all these things, you need to put now your wife at stake, and then win everything back. And then they kind of abuse that game in a way to trick the good people, and they lose again. So Duryodhana, at that point, he is trying to take the revenge of what Draupadi did to him. And he asks his younger brother to go find the person, find the queen or the person. And she refuses to come in the court because she doesn't want to break the decorum and stuff like that. But, he drags her with her hair all the way to the court. It is super insulting. Nobody really pays any attention. The brothers, so she's in a marriage where she has 5 husbands at the same time. All the 5 brothers on the Pandava side, they get married to the same woman. So we don't know how that works, but that's one of the key things of that story. So all these 5 brothers are helpless when Draupadi is brought to the court. And the insult doesn't stop there. Duryodhana basically says that, hey, why don't, we need to just get her naked and stuff like that, right? So it goes on, like the insult goes on, and they start pulling her sari. And Krishna comes to her help basically at that point, so-called. I mean, there's a beautiful book written by Divakar Kulkarni. She has written the whole story of Mahabharata from the perspective of this actor, the main female actor, Draupadi, and she has a beautiful take on the so-called, like typically in a very regular, superficial way, you say, oh, Shri Krishna is the God, and God was supplying extra cloth material, and then she never really showed off her body. But there's different understandings as to what might have happened during that time. But regardless of that, that kind of leads to this war effectively. And now there's so many things, atrocities that have happened, that they say, okay, war is the only solution. And that's where they are now. And they have made a decision. Arjuna has made a decision. We are going to fight. And this is literally the last second where, the Kauravas, the bad side, has come to the battlefield. The Pandavas, the good people, they have come to the battlefield. Now they're facing each other. And there is an existential crisis that Arjuna goes through. So Arjuna basically is, he asks Krishna that's another interesting story, which might be of interest for you guys, is like, so Krishna is not part of Kaurava or Pandava, right? He's somebody else. He's another friend. He's also a king in his own kingdom. They are called as Yadavas, totally different. But Arjuna is friends with him. And it so happens that Arjuna's mom is a sister of Krishna's father. So they are somewhat related. Yeah. So he comes, so Krishna is very much part of the whole family in a way. He loves Pandavas and stuff like that, and he also talks to Kauravas. But though the other people, they always are mocking him and stuff like that. So they don't have the perfect dynamics. So now that they have decided that they're going to have this big war between Kauravas and Pandavas for the kingdom, they are now getting all the different other kingdoms to come and help, on which side are you going to fight, right? So they simultaneously actually Duryodhana reaches to Yadavas, and he's looking for Krishna, and he finds him napping in his room, right? His head is on the sofa, and then he's kind of laid down, and there's a chair there, and Arjuna also arrives at the same time. So Duryodhana runs inside and he sits on the chair, which is close to Krishna's head, near where he's sleeping on the bed. And Arjuna doesn't have a seat to sit, so he goes and sits near Krishna's feet, on the bed directly. So now, and they're waiting for Krishna to wake up, and Krishna wakes up. And they both are there to ask for help. Now, it is interesting how help can be completely diametrically opposite depending on where you're coming from, right? What is the help? I mean, they are in a war situation, and they need probably armaments, they need armies, and they need people to help them out, right? For both of them. So they sit like that, and Krishna, because he opens his eyes, he sees Arjuna first. And then Duryodhana says, hey, look, I'm here too. Since I was a little bit ahead of Arjuna, I need to get the priority to choose what I need from you for this war. But Krishna says, well, it just so happens that I've seen Arjuna first, so I'm going to give Arjuna the first chance to ask. And then Duryodhana suddenly is quite depressed, and he says, oh, damn, now the whole army is going to go to Arjuna. And Arjuna says, well, for my side, no, Krishna basically said, you have to pick between me and the whole army, the Yadavas. They had like 100,000 army people or something like that. And he says, that's the choice. You are two people, and I put me versus this army. Go ahead and pick. So Arjuna says, okay, well, if that's the choice, then I'm going to pick you, Krishna. I want you on my side, just one person. And Duryodhana is very, he just kind of smiles internally, laughs, and he says, oh, finally, I think I was so worried that he was going to get the whole army. So, and he chooses the whole Yadava army, and he gets those 100,000 soldiers. And then Krishna basically joins Arjuna and Pandava side, and Arjuna, but Krishna has promised, who does he promise? I think he promises the mother of Duryodhana, because she's also close to Krishna. He promises her that, look, this war is going to happen. I can't help it, but I promise that I'm not going to pick up any arms. So I'm not going to be fighting. I'm not going to be the soldier. I promise you that much, is what he says. So he keeps that promise. He tells Arjuna, look, I'm not going to fight. So how do you want me to help you? And then, he ends up becoming the charioteer for his chariot, Arjuna's chariot. And so it's a great, there's so much metaphor here, a blind king, the 100 kids that he has, they are blind in a way, because even though they have eyes, they all are blind to understand what is the reality. They choose there's just so much greed in their mindset, the way they're approaching it. They want the kingdom to themselves, and they are not sharing anything with the brothers. And here you have on the other side, they have chosen Krishna, who is completely not going to fight. And then he gives him the control of his chariot, the reins, right? It's almost kind of like, I have God on my side, Arjuna's, it's effectively like that, right? I mean, the notion of God here, Krishna as God, doesn't really appear immediately. The reader sort of knows, but the players in that story don't really know, right? For the longest time. They have seen some random things along the way. But again, from our point of view, from contemporaneous point of view, or, at least how I think about it, it's just somebody who is well-balanced person, who is driving the chariot, basically. And Arjuna is a good warrior, but he is not a good decision maker, as we will see, right, in this Gita. So he basically asks Krishna, hey, look, can you drive me to the center of the battlefield, because I need to see who am I fighting? Well, what's going on the other side? So that's where the first chapter starts, right? And so Krishna takes him out there, and Arjuna basically looks at his grandpa is there, his teacher is there, and everybody's there, his brothers. And then he's also worried about all the different kingdoms that have joined to fight. And some of them are his friends, and he's worried suddenly about the whole population. And the natural worry from his point of view is, look, is this even worth it, man? Like, I mean, do we really need this kingdom this bad? Are we really going to butcher thousands and hundreds of thousands of people like this? That absolutely does not make sense. And he, being a good soul, he says to Krishna, look, I have no energy to fight these people. I would rather lose. So here I'm going to take a pause here. So what do you guys, raise a hand. What do you guys think? I mean, is this a good stance that he takes? I mean, obviously we have done 6 chapters, so there's no secret. But I would like you to sort of like think honestly how you would react to such a situation. Today also we come across these kind of realities where we sometimes have to make a hard choice, be it with our kids or in the office or whatnot. We tend to take this so-called social condition based good path for many reasons. One is, we're afraid of the cops, we are afraid of the law, or we are afraid of what the neighbors are going to say or whatnot, right? I mean, that happens to us in real life. So the floor is open. Yeah. Go ahead, Jason.
Okay, so I think be honest, that's my at beginning, I think the chapter 1 is not important, okay, because the key lesson is the rest of them during the dialogue. So, but we hear you talk about this again and again and again every time you mention this one. So it's right. It's a set up the background, right? It set up the background, and it's every condition, do or not to do, or to be or not to be. That's always the situation we have. We can bring up any kind of metaphor we want, but basics, actually our daily decision, right? To do or not to do, or action or inaction. That's every decision we are making, from the small thing like whether or not I go out for dinner, or I'm going to quit my job. That's the same situation. It happened every day.
And we tend to kind of take a path where we sort of sometimes we are not. I mean, like I said, right? I think if we had a much more difficult. I mean, just imagine, right? You and your brother, here you're standing in front of each other, and you're about to, the call to action at that point is you have to kill your brother to save the planet. That's literally what Arjuna is facing. And like if I put myself in that shoe, I don't care how terrible my brother is. Would I take that decision? And that is where it's really hard sometimes for us to kind of distinguish between what is the right thing to do versus what what other people will think about me if I did something, if I killed my own brother, sort of thing, right? So Joseph, you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I thought a lot about this. I think, the reason it begins in the middle of a war, and then you think about the meaning behind that, and I think about it in the terms of, and I actually brought this up the other evening. It's not totally dissimilar to something where, and I know the two are very different, but in Christianity, where they talk about the idea of accepting your cross, so to speak, right? And so that you're taking up, you're accepting your duty. And sometimes in the world that we don't necessarily want to do certain things. However, there is the right thing to do, no matter how, difficult it may be. This is the extreme circumstance, right? So if you're demonstrating that a principle works, you have to put it in a circumstance where it absolutely, the individual understands that this is true. This is what, this is the way the world has to go. In this particular instance, it doesn't have to, you have choice, but nonetheless, that you have a decision to make, and it doesn't necessarily work out. The world doesn't work out exactly the way you want it to. And that's the most important thing to realize. You may lose family members. You may have to go against your own family in doing the right thing in a particular circumstance. And that can't detract you from doing the right thing. So as far as setting up the dialogue itself, the dialogue between Krishna and Arjun, I see this as, it's a very effective way to communicate the decisions that we have to make sometimes and how difficult they may be. But there is a right and wrong thing to do. And so that's, I think it also sets up with the idea of how all the philosophy and all the wisdom, that subsequent wisdom that we get from the yogs, from the idea of self, the ego, everything else, that meditation, the different journeys that we can take, the multiple different journeys. That's the one distinction I would make between Christianity, is that there's multiple paths to the center. Whereas, as there's only seems to be one path. So if you were to draw a diagram, it would be circular, versus where it would be a little bit more direct if it were Christianity. So that's the beauty of it. And that then from there, you can start to accept the world for what it is and not what you want it to be. And then go from there. So I think as far as the chapter 1, it's a very good way of demonstrating that if you believe this to be true, it's a principle. Here's a circumstance that you would, not want to be in. And here it is.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great observation. And I think we are always faced with choices in our lives, right? But what is important with the first chapter is it's called as Vishada Yoga, means Arjuna's depression that he's going through, and that is considered as a yoga, which itself is kind of is oxymoron, the word there, where they just don't go together, right? So the depression yoga, effectively, dejection yoga, and that is something that you can't call dejection as yoga, but it is it's almost like, we are faced as human beings with so many choices in our lives. And then we kind of select whatever we want to select, but they tend to be very not very earth-shattering decisions, if you will. Once in a while, we do face things like that. But the true existential crisis moment is really the moment that we all fear, actually, right? We don't want to be there. We just want to be on the surface level and, kind of float along in life. But those amazing amount of depression times where you really have to make that choice, and, somebody loved one passed away, or your job situation or whatnot, right? Something that kind of really shakes your reality. That is an opening to, so, here he has completely given up, but the reality is that there's hundreds and thousands of people ready to kill each other in the battlefield. And this important person is about to give up, which means it is going to impact a lot of these poor people who are trying to follow Arjuna in this war. They are going to be worsely impacted. Bad might be if they lose, but if Arjuna gives up, it's going to be worse for them. And it probably is not going to do any good to anybody, even though Arjuna's stance kind of seems good. So it is beautiful that his friend Krishna uses that, why he should fight the war. And then he really takes that into this journey of self, or how to live life. And what is the form of duty? What should we call as duty? Why do we have to do what we have to do? What is our inner calling? And, how do we know what is the right thing, in a given situation? And it's easy to say we have to do the right thing, but then what does that even mean? So that whole discussion where he goes from why he should consider himself as a warrior and fight, and then suddenly Arjuna takes that into this whole direction of overall, what is life, And I know I've had situations, I've gone through divorce, I've gone through a variety of things, coming to America from India and stuff like that. There have been times where it's like everything just kind of feels like I've lost everything, it's like, what is going to happen now, right? And those are actually the moments where you gravitate towards trying to really question, who am I? What is this? What is this? Why is this thing happening? Why does this have to be like this? And, there's a lot of anger and a lot of emotions and stuff like that. But after you get tired through that rigmarole of emotions, you get to a certain level of peace with the situation. And that peace is now you're wanting to question, is my brother really my brother? What is this relationship I have with my father? Why does this have to be like this? So all the norms the society has put, those norms work in good times. But when reality comes, reality hits you hard, and that hard hitting, we tend to kind of run away from it, right? And what Krishna and the first chapter tries to impress upon us is that it is really, really, we should thank, the universe, I guess, that opportunity has come to you. It's very rare that people get this opportunity to kind of make this step jump from a mundane life. And now you're like, boom, that's really the reality, brother, father, friend, this enemy who I hated so much. I don't even know why I hated that person, So those are the things that kind of will change your perspective. And here Krishna totally changes the whole game, saying, things like, in the second chapter, right? Second chapter is effectively the whole summary of the whole book. It's interesting. It starts with the depression yoga, and there's a solution given to you in second chapter immediately. And that's it. You could just stop there. Second chapter, you could just stop there. That's it. But then there's all the details that follow along there. But yeah, no, sorry, Joseph, you were going to say something. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, you need to move on. I mean, but I
No,
think
I
that
don't
this
need to
is
move on.
also
Yeah,
what,
we can. It's an open discussion.
oh, okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think that the really, this kind of also sets up as to how important it is for the four yogas, why knowledge is important, why service is important, you know, why meditation is important, why devotion is important, devotion to what is the right thing to do.
Right.
All of those start to or come into context because you're in this position as to that seems to be untenable, right? And it is to us, that's part of the point. So you start to see why all the practices, knowledge of what the right thing to do is, how the universal principle actually fits into this into this story. And then I do agree with you that the second chapter to me has always been the most important, as far as ego is concerned, understanding the self, and then kind of understanding the root causes of what is really drawing you away from your center. What is the root of your desire, right? And as opposed to just acting in a certain way without necessarily contemplating. And the reason that's so important is because you look inward to act out. And once you look inward to act out, that allows you to see the God in everyone. And that's because you have to look inside, and that's where you start to see you see yourself, and then you see yourself interconnected with everything else. And because you look at your own darkness, and so it's a very important lesson, because you're confronting yourself, and I equated it to Stoicism the other night a little bit as well, because it's the idea that you're looking at what's in your control, and that directly relates to the idea of service, in the sense that I look what's inside, and then I start to understand that everything else is obviously outside my control, but I have an opportunity to do the right thing. And what that right thing is, then we have a set of kind of we have various ways, the gunas and all the other aspects of really knowing the depth of Hinduism, as to how to know what the right thing is to do. But it also, chapter 2 really focuses on detachment, which is also very important when you're talking about detaching from externals in order to understand what the right thing is to do. Because if you're acting for externals, you're acting away from who you really are. So, and then that's also really important when it, I think, because you start to disregard truth the minute you start acting towards what's external as opposed to what's internal. And so this disregard, meaning what is truth in this particular instance, it's what you believe to be, what is wisdom. So I mean, anyway, I'll leave it there. Actually, I've been talking about.
No. So that's really a good point that you bring up. And one thing that I just want to bring back to this discussion is, look at how animals behave, right? Animals behave, in a certain way. When they're hungry, the lion is just going to attack the deer and kill it. And there's no question, there's nothing else. So there is no buildup of this so-called karma in that kingdom, right? The animal kingdom, right? There's no such thing as karma is going to get you. That's not happening there. It's totally driven by need. And, that's almost kind of like, one of the terms that we use in Sanskrit is kriya. Kriya is a response to your need. I need this, so I do it, right? Karma is where, as a human being, we tend to, unfortunately or fortunately, yeah, go ahead.
How do you spell that?
Kriya, Kriya. Kriya is it's just an act out of need, right? It's like, hey, I have my cheek is itching, so I just go and scratch it, right? So that's just basically just that. And
Thank you.
Yeah. And then karma, what happens is, now suddenly, I was just about to say, like, human beings, we are basically animals, but with this extra factor of mind, right? So mind is what brings within us this notion of defining I and defining you, right? The others. That distinction, and really, typically what happens is our actions are always driven by, one of the things Arjuna says is that, look, even if I win this kingdom, if all my loved ones are dead, what's the point of it, right? So that itself is a very selfish observation, and which is what Krishna alludes to, is like, and I mean, not directly, but sort of indirectly, and we can look at it within ourselves, right? Typically we want to buy this new house or any other things, most of the time it is either, if you're by yourself and you're living in this big house, I don't think you would enjoy as much. If anything, you might actually feel miserable and lonely in that big house. But what you need is probably a wife and kids and friends and some enemies, because you want to show it off. So this is what Arjuna immediately says in first chapter itself, saying, hey, look, what is the point in me winning, when all these people are going to die? So that kind of shows that he wants to win for the sake of the others, not for the call of action, what is required at the moment. And this is what Krishna kind of wants to suggest, that the moment you are bringing these other parties in your decision making, it's going to bias your decision. You are not going to be taking the right decision. Then forget about these loved ones, forget about the enemies. It's not the first time you fought, Arjuna. You fought so many wars and you have butchered hundreds of thousands of people, without any kind of a dilemma in your mind. And what's happening right now? And it's just because there are loved ones on the other side. It's just a war. And he also tells him, look, even if you go away, all these people are going to die. Nobody is going to live infinitely, even your loved ones. Just because you love them, that doesn't mean that they're going to get a longer life, and you yourself are going to die, and they're going to be probably fighting this war regardless of you, because they are here to fight a war, and they're going to fight a war and they're going to kill each other, and I already know what is going to happen, and they're going to die, so there's no point in crying. You are, even though you're talking like you think you're talking wisdom, but that wisdom is not your pure wisdom, right? It is something that society has made you think like that. Society has made you think in terms of what is good, and you shouldn't hurt somebody, you shouldn't, pick up arms, don't hurt your brother, all these social conditioning, you're just repeating like a parrot, you're not really, this is not your own wisdom. So that is the human condition that we have been, given on this planet, right? Versus an animal who is going to kill and they're not going to feel any remorse. or they're going to do whatever they need to do, right? And they don't collect karma. We collect karma. We collect karma not because there is some other body that is sitting out there and keeping an account of your good and bad actions. No, it's what it does to us when we take that action. So if I take that action, knowing that I'm hurting somebody, I am creating that karma within me saying that, oh, wait a second, I did hurt that person, and I'm going to carry that, and it is going to come back to bite me. So to not have the karma created, the advice Krishna gives in second chapter, or third chapter now, is that you need to drop this I-ness, this doership. The doership is the biggest problem. You need to do your action with and the doership comes from what? The doership comes from you thinking, this is I, mine, my wife, my kids, my kingdom, my friend, my teacher, my uncle, my granddad, all that stuff, right? So that this whole mine builds your I, and your actions are thus skewed, and you're building a bad karma, and you are not going to take the right decision, and you're going to be in this cycle of birth and death. The cycle of birth and death is also kind of interesting, right? Cycle of birth and death is, at least the way I understand it, and I think I've mentioned that in our talks in the past, even though there is a notion of reincarnation, people coming back to rebirth, all that is great. There's a purpose to that. It's as if a device for you to think about life in a positive way, so you can live life productively and much more effective, when you're coming to being a human being on this planet. But to me, in general, we're daily, or every moment we are reborn in a way. Our cells are dying, we are coming back. Or even if you look at a span of lifespan, just a short span, maybe my lifespan with the last company that I was, and then this company that I am working with, or with my wife and without my wife, or my childhood, right? At each of these points, I'm doing some things based on my understanding or my fears or my attraction or my attachment to people. And that is building karmas. Those karmas in my next life, I'm going to somehow pay for it, right? In my, whatever I did in childhood or whatnot, I come to America, somehow that thing has followed me, the thing that I ran away from, or thing that I totally was in love and enamored by it. I realized after some time, it is only short-lived anyways, and I wasted so much time in that. And so this notion of karma follows us because we have this attachment to things or fear of things, and detachment is absolutely a key principle. And that leads us into the third chapter, where he extols upon karma yoga, right? Karma yoga, what is the right thing to do? How do you know that? The right thing to do is known when the action comes to you a little more naturally without you judging the outcome. Now, he says you don't want to pay attention to results. Obviously, that's the part of the judging process, right? So if you don't care about win or loss, and the action is presented to you, the win or loss is really a determination by you and the society. So you're really doing it for the others, not so much for you. So this other factor needs to be removed, right? You don't want to worry about what people are going to say and all that stuff. So then how do you really conduct this action? So he gives a very nice, simple principle, just devote the action to me. That devote the action to me, Krishna, is not a selfish thing. It's that me is that deeper me, the consciousness that we all have. So the layers that we have, there's the deepest layer is the consciousness. The next layer, if you will, is the intellect. The next layer after that is the mind, then follows the senses, and then our body and our parts and stuff like that. And then there are the objects out there. So as the stimulation comes through our eyes or ears, within us, mind immediately wants to look at the form and say, oh, that's a rectangle laptop. I give it a name. I have an immediate liking or disliking. I want to go to it and not go to it, right? So mind is that biggest problem child, right? And then what the mind tends to do is it says, oh, intellect, it kind of overtakes intellect, and it says, oh, remember that last time we did this, so we're going to do this now again. And then intellect says, okay, fine, just do it, right? So now the whole body is following, and the horses are hither skither, right, everywhere. So the me that Krishna is talking about, devote the action to me, karma yoga. We started from the dejection yoga to action yoga, which is the karma yoga. What it comes to is every action that you do, don't do it for anybody. Don't do it for yourself, meaning don't worry about the result. You're doing it for a larger purpose. Now, that larger purpose, if you want to call it Brahman, fine. But if it makes it easy, think about a deity, dedicate the action. Because when you're going to dedicate your action to some higher cause, you are going to make a right choice. Not biased by your family, not biased by any of the mundane earthly things. So that's quite a deep understanding. People have taken that to mean that, I'm going to be a devotee of Krishna. Krishna doesn't say that anywhere. That me that he's talking about is the me that we all have. You have a me, I have a me. That whole me is the oneness, the consciousness. And if we dedicate our action to that consciousness, what we are doing is we are kind of shutting down our mind and shutting down our intellect. And now whatever comes out is a pure action. So that's the thing. So Joseph, you want to add something?
Sure. I mean, Ocean can speak really quickly because he hasn't spoken yet, but then I can go after that.
Okay, Ocean, go ahead.
Hey, thank you very much. It's a good. I've been reading the Bhagavad Gita several times in the last 10, 20 years, so it's really good to revisit. And I have some questions from time to time, and good to hear what you said in the last 3 minutes. I have a simple question. So let's say example, okay? So life example instead of abstract discussion. So let's say I felt the Brahman, or I felt the bigger whole picture. I saw some look like frail looking homeless people or whatever, and so not considering considering about my family or my own interests, and just big, so you feel the love for the humanity and just give the money or just do anything to help this guy, and this guy turned out to be secret child molester. Because when you're helping this guy, instead of letting him die, he's gonna secretly continue to molest the child or other, like a female homeless people, raping homeless people, so forth. Well, that's but my point is though, when you feel certain force, spiritual force, yeah, this is it. I'm doing it for. I feel the will of God, or feel the sense of Brahman, and I'm doing it. But there is no enlightened masters besides you to verify, yeah, what you're doing is correct, or what you're not doing is correct. So who's gonna tell you that what you're doing is coincide with the Brahman or not? You may, regardless of how you feel, you may end up hurting the society. So how are you going to answer to that? Thank you very much.
Yeah. Stay with me. Yeah, I think that's a great question, right? So that's a dilemma. What you're presenting is you are the Arjuna, and you are now wondering. I'm no Krishna, but I'm going to give you my take on this. Is that first of all, don't help anybody. Help is a very egoistic word. I am helping the homeless man. So when you have that notion of I am helping, you think that you have an upper hand over the homeless man, right? And then you feel like, oh, I better be, this person be thanking me. But really, you can turn that around, right? the turning around piece, in fact, he covers this, Krishna covers this in later chapters where he talks about Kshatriyas, the warrior clan people, which is Arjuna, and they are known to give alms to the community, dan we call it, or help to people, right? So they are very generous people. So that generosity can be done for two purposes. One is they are trying to gain name in the society, or they're trying to do something, some ulterior motive, right? When you are helping somebody, the Krishna's whole thing can be summarized into the reality is me. I am the reality. I am the most important thing. The other person is the other person. Other person is not my responsibility. So when I help, what is it doing to me? Do I feel happy about that help? Is it bringing me happiness? Or am I worried about what my help is going to do to this other person? So now you're controlling that person to whatever extent you want to control him, right? And now the impact of that is not so much the other person. The impact is on your mind. So that waves, that kind of turbulence that any action can cause in your mind, that's a problem, right? So anything you do in life, any damn thing, kill a person, steal, do a good act, anything, make sure that it doesn't leave those ripples on your mind. Okay, so here you helped a homeless person, and that left a ripple on your mind saying, wait a second, that could be a child molester. Yes, you're absolutely right. So, then there is no goodwill, or there is no collection of good karma from the fact that you helped somebody. Let's just make that clear. That is a complete, that's my understanding of religion, okay? Now you do that out of your kindness, and now that guy might be a child molester, that guy might be whatever they might be. Go approach that problem separately from the fact that you're helping. Two different actions. One is you're helping, that help that you give is bringing some happiness to you. See, every time an action that we do, Sat Chit Anand, right? Existence, awareness, bliss. So it looks like you're driving. I hope you're safe. So the action that you're doing, right? If you can express happiness in it, that expression of happiness is very multiplicative. You can bring about heaven in hell. Just the mere presence of your happiness, expressing happiness, and that comes from your fountain of bliss. So the action that you're helping this person, look within. Did it make you happy? Great. That is one action done. Don't leave any impact on your mind. Don't let any karma collect. Then as further down along, you figure out, oh, that guy was a child molester. Forget about the fact that you helped him. That's not the connection. The fact that he's a child molester, address it separately, right? Go talk to the laws people, talk to this person, So there's this beautiful story about, how bliss and heaven and hell, one of the Swamis was talking about. And I think was there a poet or a author by, his last name was Buck, I don't know, was he in America or somewhere, but he was one of those.
Buck?
Huh?
Pearl Buck, are you talking about?
Maybe. But anyways, yeah, this is like centuries ago. Apparently this story happens where he basically is an atheist, right? He doesn't believe in God. But the funny thing is, he likes to go to the church. He wants to sit there. And, so one of his friends asks him, why do you go to church? I mean, you don't believe in God. He says, I love to see the happiness in that priest, the guy who gives the sermon, and the joy that brings to that person. That joy is so tangible. Like it does something to me. I don't believe in this stuff, but I look in his eyes something that I feel I'm missing because of my lack of belief, and not that I want to believe, but I'm there. So he ends up talking to one of the priests, saying, "Hey, look, you in your sermon right now, you said, look, good people, good actions, you're going to go to heaven. Bad people, bad actions, you're going to go to hell, and stuff like that." So, and he basically says, what if there is a bad person who does good action, and what happens? Does he go to heaven? And so he comes up with all these permutation combinations and things like that. And the priest basically is kind of flustered, and because a lot of the when we talk about all these meta ideas, there's no science around it. This is a guideline for us to ponder upon and come up with our own theories. That that is obviously one important lesson that Buddha gives is don't follow anybody, right? Here's Buddhism, but don't follow anybody. You have to come up with your own reality that is going to guide you in your life, right? So you cannot be Krishna, you cannot be Buddha, you cannot be any of those guys. You are just going to be, in this case, Joseph or Ocean or Shashi in my case, right? We're all going to be ourselves, unique selves. So the priest doesn't know the answer, and he is quite troubled. And that night he can't sleep. So he dreams, and in his dream, he goes to heaven. So he's on a train, and he doesn't know where the train is going. And he asks the other people in the train, "Hey, where's this train going?" And he says, "Oh, it's going to heaven." He's like, "Oh, okay, great. Yeah, thank God." And then he's like, "Oh, heaven is going to be blah, blah, blah. It's going to be just amazing. I'm going to meet Socrates. I'm going to meet Jesus. I'm going to meet Krishna, Buddha, all these people, right?" And then he gets to heaven, and it's just pretty utterly boring and dull, and there's nothing interesting about heaven. And he's like, just does not seem right. Something is not right. Maybe let me go to the hell. All right. And pull back. Yeah, Joseph. So he says, okay, let me take the train to the hell. And he goes to hell, and he runs into Socrates there. And Socrates is tilling the land. And he says, well, Socrates, what's wrong? Like, why are you in hell here? I mean, aren't you supposed to be in heaven? So the response that Socrates gives is, you, Mr. Priest, you got something wrong again. Heaven and hell is not something where you go. It is your inner thing, how you feel. My presence here makes heaven around me. My inner being, be it in heaven or hell, I am in heaven. That is his perspective. But anyways, I don't know if that is connected with Ocean's story, Ocean's point of view there. But Ocean, I think, do you agree with me when I said, like, you got to separate it out? The action that you helped, let it bring some bliss to you, move on. You realize he's a child molester, go and take a separate action on that. Without any
that's how I live. I practice my own mental masturbation a lot. I do things to make myself happy. I don't care about what other people or entire world thinks about me. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, awesome. That's a great. Those are one of those life's questions.
I totally agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so next we have Joseph. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just really quickly.
Thank you for referring.
No problem, Ocean.
I think that one of the most important parts is you're talking about action not being tied to outcomes, and this is, kind of what Arjun is. Like, he's a man of action, right? Essentially, and it's not for selfish action. And this is where the relationship between the action that you're taking is not tied to the outcome. And so that's the deep point within that framework. So that is karma yoga. It's you're letting go, and in that process, subsequent to that, what that does is it allows you to let go then the ego. So that if so you start to understand what your ego actually is. What is it that is driving these things. The other point that I think that was that it'll less, and that actually will, just let me briefly say, that allows you get to what you talked about a couple of weeks ago with some very nice diagrams with the essence of the self within that process. But this also comes back to one other point that I was going to make. I forget, it had to do with self-discipline and self-control. Self-control essentially. But it'll have to come back to me. Ultimately, you're understanding Atman, correct? In this process, that's the goal. That's what you're kind of getting to.
Correct.
And that's what kind of,
and that Atman and the consciousness, or Paramatma is another word that throughout the book they use that term. Brahman, they are kind of related, right? Same thing. If anything, one could say that animals, because they don't have this filter of the mind, not that, I don't know if we know, like maybe there is, maybe there's not, right? But they we can, for all practical purposes, let's say they don't have so-called mind that we have. So they are probably way closer to the Atman, right? So we too are very close to Atman. It's just that, remember from the Drigdrisha Viveka, the seer seen lecture, where there's the reflected consciousness that once the consciousness comes, consciousness is everywhere, and there are certain different types of beings. They have the property to take that consciousness and reflect, and that reflection process now assumes that it is the conscious body. So that is the ego part, right? So now it does not even look back saying, hey, look, I'm getting this consciousness from here, right? So I am it. And then it goes about living in the world clueless and just saying it is me and that is you, right? That separation starts happening. And that is the conditioning that we have been living throughout our lives. And we have to kind of reevaluate our choices all along the way. And Gita kind of brings that back in the whole Vedanta, everything, right? That's the beauty of Bhagavad Gita is, it's just like the shortest summary presented in a very palatable format. Otherwise, you could be reading hundreds of Upanishads and Brahma Sutra and stuff like that. But this is a very compacted way of like, how can you find that self, and how can your action be selfless action, right? So there's no I-ship, there's no I. I know you use the word selfish, but it's a matter of understanding of these two different words. Jason, do you want to say something?
I don't know. Sorry. I find out Gandhi's translation is pretty good. I don't know, how do you think, but I find out that's the one I can really read it. Okay, because he writes something and he can, from time to time he insert his own comment. Okay, and the comment, read his comment, then reread the verses, and I find out it's quite helpful. I don't know your opinion on that?
Well, the Aurobindo stuff, right? I sent something, if you look at the abstract of the meeting, there's a video there that I wanted. Did anybody watch that video at all that I sent?
Oh,
I don't know if we play the video. I would like to pause the video and we can have a nice discussion. This is a very small 1 year of his lifespan, which is a life-changing thing that happens to Aurobindo. And one of his detailed writings on Bhagavad Gita are also available. You can buy that on Amazon. I think it's like a book. But he also has lots of essays and things like that. And one of the things that Bhagavad Gita does is that it that's why I think it has stood through the test of time, right? All through the ages, God knows when it was written, but there has been perspectives depending on which time you look at what's going on in India or who is reading it. There are some Western authors who have taken this and written their expansion on it. And, you look at what Shankara wrote about Bhagavad Gita, all these different ideas, right? Really, what you have to do is maybe pick 2-3 of them, and then you go back to the text. Like that's why the Aurobindo's text is kind of important, because we can't read Sanskrit. But if you read Aurobindo's text or even Gandhi's text, right, then don't get stuck with what they're saying, right? Think about in the terms of today's time, right? We have AI problems, we have issues in this country, we have so many things, about me, my life, today's, what is, make it a little more contemporary and make it a little more relevant. Gandhi, what he does is he is writing the Gita more to basically stir up a notion of nationalism, because they wanted to get rid of Britishers at that time, right? So a lot of his understanding of Gita is skewed, if you look at it, more towards calling for people to take action, help others, service others. But if you look at the larger context of what Krishna is talking about, it has nothing to do with a nation or even Hindu religion for that matter, right? It is really a deep, to me at least, right? It's a deep research work on how mind works and what is I. And it's a theory, obviously, just like, there's string theory to explain all the universes and galaxies and stuff like that. Nobody knows where the string is, right? So here there is a theory presented by some XYZ author, and it is, and people can take that and use it for religious purposes. They can use it for national politics purposes. They can use it to guide students. People can use it for old age. How do you live life and how do you feel better about yourself? All kinds of different things, right? Aurobindo's beauty is that he was a freedom fighter literally at the same time as Gandhi. He also comes from British education. His father was very anti-Indian. He moved the whole family to Britain, and he studied there, and he excelled one of their exams. I think it is called as ICS or something like that back then. And Gandhi also became a barrister or a lawyer in Britain, right? And then he goes to Africa, and then he comes to India. So that was his journey to come to India to help the cause. Aurobindo is participating in that. Gandhi takes this extreme step of saying non-violence. That is the only way we are going to do. If you look at Aurobindo, some of his other essays, he does not say that is, he was not opposed to violence. Violence that is coming from, it's almost kind of like what Krishna is telling to Arjuna, right? There is a purpose for everything, and the understanding of violence and non-violence can go beyond hurting somebody, just like, physically hurting is what Gandhi was focused on, right? Blood pouring out of somebody else's body. That is a way of looking at violence. But there's also a very subtle kind of a violence that happens in the society, just because how we come across to them, how we talk to them, they might feel hurt. That hurt multiplies in the society. They go and hurt more other people, right? That is a perpetuating violence that we are creating in the society because of our ignorance. And Aurobindo's focus was not, he was thinking a little bit farther. He was saying, of course, we want to get India to be independent, but how can we create citizens who are going to be, he calls it as an integral yoga, right? It's very interesting. He talks about how can we change human beings from inside so that we are way more, this notion of oneness spreads and India becomes this example for rest of the world. And, we multiply this across the world. Everybody is living their fullest. That was his whole thing. And he was not limited to the cause that Gandhi's cause was. Gandhi's cause was very much about independence against Britishers. But they very relevant. Gandhi is also a Mahatma. He's almost, to me, he's very revered, almost at the level of Buddha. But there is a subtle slant to his reading. That's why I presented both of them, right? That you can get a lot of other things. There is no reason why you would go and dig up Aurobindo's or Gandhi's translation. But these are, I think, two sort of diametrically different type of interpretations of Gita. And it is good for you guys to make your own judgment. So obviously, yeah.
Yeah, no, anyway, thank you for this kind of information, because I just from the outside point of view, I find out that's easy to understand.
It's easy to understand.
I will pay attention on his, but at least so far I haven't smelled the Gandhi's nationalism feeling in this one. At least
okay.
I haven't
Yeah.
yet. Okay,
Yeah.
so but but that's my personal belief.
No, I wouldn't say nationalism. I think it's more about like, he takes this whole idea of, okay, so Gandhi's purpose was, it was a little more like there were too many poor people, right? So what he was trying to do, there were poor people, there was also low-caste tribes, there was caste system that was rampant. So he wanted to fight Britishers, but then he was also trying to bring these poor people to, so that they can feel comfortable with the rest of the Hindu, Brahmins, and everybody, and then they can serve the final purpose, which is getting Britishers out of the country. So how can you rally the poor people? And we even have Muslims right there. So his whole thing was Hindu, Muslim, they're brothers, right? And he was also like trying to tell the middle class and upper class people, hey, look, Gita says you need to help other mankind. So there's that message that is very prevalent in his reading of Gita, is like, help other people, help them so that they will love you back and they will help the larger cause. So that's how I interpreted it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, thank you. But my personal idea is, if the writer a little bit biased, they will make it easier to understand. But I have to aware, the translator's bias. So I think that probably that's the reason I find out easy to read. But it's great from time to time if you remind me. Okay, that's Gandhi's interpretation. That'll be very helpful. Anyway.
Yeah. No, great.
I think the Javani has a hands up before. Yeah.
I know she had, but also Ahad has been wanting to probably say something. Ahad, do you want to say something? You want to join the conversation? I would love to hear the funnier version of the story if you want to present. Okay, so a little ago, did somebody want to speak? Ahad, do you want to speak or probably not?
Mona hands up.
Oh, Mona? Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I was wondering how to bring this up in the conversation. I really appreciated your story and everything you've shared. I'm new to the meetup, so I'm just gonna
Welcome.
come out
Welcome.
with. I was trying to understand what you were saying in the context of Buddhism, when the whole purpose is to realize the Buddha nature, right? That's in the self, but also in everyone else.
Yeah.
So the point that I got out of it is that once you realize it, you still have to go back in the village and live the life,
Mhm.
and then you cannot just pretend life is not happening. You still have to be part of life and do what's needed to be done, but it's not you. It's like the best archery has no archer, right? Like, but it still has to happen.
Yeah.
So that was my understanding. And then that kind of clears the field, because everyone has the same potential. So if there is the knowing inside me or inside you, there is the knowing inside everyone. And who's to say how things should turn out, right? Why should my will prevail over anyone else's?
Yeah, and that's where you want to, when the sentence has my will, that's the problem, right?
Right.
So you don't want to, if it is a my will, you want to understand, has that will, does it have a driver? Like, am I judging people? Is it going to hurt somebody? And is it coming? Do I feel like this other person? So one of the things, I think, Jyoti, I don't know if you're still there. So one of the things that Jyoti was asking was this meditation, right? Practice. So in one of the earlier things, and it might be relevant to what Mona is asking as well, is when a person or an object, comes across you, right? Our immediate response is we are trying to put a name or an identity, a sex, girl, boy, woman, man, black, white, whatnot, right? So these superficial things we immediately want to first identify, right? So there are these characteristics that are there. So those characteristics, as our mind is thinking about that, mind is also, if you know the person, or if you know that color of that skin, you are going to look back in your memory and history, and you're going to pick up some stories to kind of bring it to your table in your mind before you even interact with this person, right? That is the part that one of the meditation practices says is, when you are facing the world, there are these, I'm forgetting what the name was used for this, but it'll come back to me. I'll have to go look at the material. But there are these names and forms and things like that. Immediately, don't even tell your mind, shut that down. Don't worry about what that person's name is. Of course, you want to acknowledge the person. That's not the point. But if that is bringing you back the old memories, wipe it away, right? And you want to, that Buddha nature that you talked about, right? I have a Buddha nature. The other person also has a Buddha nature. Now, the other person might have a very so-called evil reputation out in the world. That's okay. Your Buddha nature is going to be Buddha. You're going to observe the Buddha in the other person, right? What that means is that evil nature is not your business. That is something that if you want to deal with it, that's a separate problem. But here you are facing that. Don't bring the name for him. Don't bring the past history, nothing. And she's coming for some reason. So always look at positive is a bad term, but understand that this other person, just like I have existence, awareness, and my bliss, appreciate that other person also has existence, awareness, and bliss. That is the connecting element, right? And then you let the conversation happen. And you know, so seeing God is not like, you know, it's not some magical thing, you know, where God with two different horns is going to come in front of you. No, that's not the point. It's manifesting divinity, manifesting that Buddha. When you say, I have reached my Buddha nature, let it manifest. What that also means is let that manifest from the other thing. What that means is you have to be willing to let that happen. And when that happens, right, so that immediately opens this pathway to you also, you know, it opens the pathway for you to feel the oneness. You might enjoy the conversation. You know, things are going to happen probably in the right way. If you want to express something that is something not very pleasant, that very pleasant and very, you know, disturbing, all of that is a name form type of a thing. But you want a direct communication pathway. But if you create an environment where this kind of communication is possible, the other person might receive it well or might not receive it well. So go with that attitude, not with a winning, you know, like I'm going to win or lose, right? Which is what Arjuna's problem was. Arjuna was worried he might win, right? And that also was a little bit of an arrogance, because Krishna says to him, why do you think you're going to win? You know, you think you're such a big warrior? No, you might even lose. What about that? You know, so I think you're getting the point, right? I think, yeah. So when
I think it opens the door to allow for what happens.
What happens exactly?
What happens, yes. Right?
Yes. And now you're acting from the consciousness perspective, not your mind, not your senses, none of that, right? Not your intellect, where you have memory of past and stuff like that. Shove that aside. Be present. When they say here and now, right, you know, we just don't know, right? You know, all these terminologies have been thrown around so much. We all know the right terminologies. It's just how to act upon it. And I think that's a meditation technique, Jyoti, right? So you were asking about a meditation technique, right? Meditation is obviously, there is a meditation where you can sit and do something. One of the meditation practices in chapter 6, which Jason reminded me, is, you know, so you're sitting and obviously, you know, there's a whole thing where he says, you know, find a comfortable place, and, you know, what you sit on, you know, they say, you know, you want to sit on a deer skin and all that stuff, you know, again, you know, we want to bring it to reality of what our life is. You know, find a comfortable place, you know, you sit down and stuff like that. And you know, look at the nose tip, right? The nose tip, and you close your eyes. If you've ever seen Buddha's pictures, right, they always show his eyes half open, if you notice that half open nature, right, of the eyes, it's almost, and how do you get to that half open is, obviously you don't want to close your eyes. When you close your eyes, the problem is that you might fall asleep. That's asleep. Sleep is not meditation. It's good, but it's not meditation. Sleep is only good because you're not creating more destruction to your mind out in the world. So you bring the eyes where the eyes are now looking at the nose tip. What that does apparently is that almost everything starts looking kind of blurred up. And one of the most important teaching in Vedanta is we have to come to a point where we can see this world as a dream. Yes, it is real. You know, when somebody hits my hand, it hurts, all of that stuff. But so does it hurt us when we are in our dream state, right? When we are dreaming, it will hurt us in the dream, and it seems very real there, right? And it is feeling very real here too. So one of the devices, if you will, right, in Vedanta is that to consider this as, to some extent, a dream. What that means is all the good things and the bad things that have happened to you, just like how they happened to you in the night, in the dream, in the morning you wake up and it's as if nothing has happened. And in fact, nothing has happened, right? So you want to take the events that are happening around you lightly. Why? So that it doesn't impact your mind. Again, your mind, think about the calmness, a serene lake. There shouldn't be any ripples. Your mind should be like that, right? So the meditation practice is you close your thing and tip of the nose, and now I'm going to also talk about what Kevin asked, very first question about Om. So now when you are looking at the tip of the nose, let your mind wander. The goal of it is you follow that thought. You are observing that thought, how it is leading to multiple thoughts. And, you might start thinking about your daughter-in-law or brother or something and blah, 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 right? And you will notice that train of thought will usually lead to something very utterly negative. And again, then you immediately pull yourself back and realize, look, this train of thought has brought me to this place where it is utterly negative. None of that is real. And all of that, your mind has painted these thoughts in you, right? So the idea is that you observe, so you are observing you thinking, right? So now there is a distance that you have created between your mind, which you think is you, but now you're saying, oh, look, I can see these thoughts, and look, I hate this person, so these thoughts are coming about that person, or I'm worried about my son, and he drives this car very erratically, and he's going to commit an accident, and he's going to die, right? So that's the fear. And then none of that has happened, but the mind has built this story for you. And then that kind of, in real life, when that happens, what you tend to do is you're sitting with your son and giving him a whole bunch of advice or doing something, again, totally figment of your imagination, and you are reacting to that situation. So the meditation practice is that when the train of thought is now coming, fine, stay with the train of thought, but then you immediately, once you realize it's like, oh, I'm not following with the thought, but I'm observing the thought, and you just say, Om. Om is sort of like, boom, it comes and breaks that thought process. Om, again, Kevin, if you're still there. Are you still there, Kevin? Oh, Kevin, yeah, he's there. Okay, so Om is nothing but a disruptor in our thought process. It really has a connotation, like, it is one of the root words for every word, everything. It's a representation of consciousness. Consciousness, we came out of consciousness. It's as if, let's say I'm dreaming, right? In my dream, I see Jason and I see some other people and friends and stuff like that, right? But Jason is real out there. But in my dream, the Jason is my imagination, right? So, and I am putting the qualities to Jason, XYZ, he's doing something. So I'm imagining the whole story in my dream. So one of the things Vedanta says is there's Brahman, and this is dream of Brahman that we are in. So we are all the roles of Brahman imagining, right? Again, it's a theory. So the Om is A, U, Ma. So if you look at how it comes A, U, Ma, so it covers the whole space of our mouth. And all the syllables, all the vowels, all the words sort of emerge out of this A, U, Ma, Om. So it is almost kind of like the root, if you will, right? But really what it is, it's a disruptor word. And, in Christianity or Muslim religion, you have Amen. Same thing, I think, right? You are basically, you can use that as a device in your meditation practice when that thought process is continuing, Om, and then suddenly your mind is like, oh, I don't need to be thinking that thought. And, I'm back to normal. Again, staring at my nose tip. And now some other fluttering thought comes about. And then again, you let it drag along. say Om. And the people typically say chanting, the more the chants that they have, the more closer they are to the God, right? And that's the typical Hindu beliefs, right? I say 1 million Ramas and, Krishna and stuff, and like suddenly that is supposed to be good. Well, no. The idea in the meditation or the purpose of japa or taking the name of God or Om is really for you to basically look at how far along do you space out the Om. If the Om is spaced out really far out, either you are running with the mind thoughts, or you have created a nice gap between the two thoughts. And you have been able to interrupt and you are not following with the thought. So that is a measure of how peaceful you have gotten in that 1 hour or whatever amount of 20-minute meditation that you do, right? And see what it does to your mind, right? Because obviously, when we are in real life, we are dragged down, our mind is dragged down into lots of futile things, right? So that is one meditation practice. And the other is, it's a constant meditation, right? Let's say you're cooking or you're talking with somebody, you're doing whatever, same thing that I was telling to Mona, right? Observe yourself in the action. That is also meditation, right? So here I'm facing somebody who I absolutely love, might be my son. That love might make me react in a certain way. I need to watch my reaction. Or I'm here with a person that I don't particularly like. How can I come at it from a deeper level, not just from my mind? How can I shut down my mind? And mentally, you can chant the Om. That's okay. And, so that, again, don't let the names and forms kind of bias your decision-making process. That's also almost like you're living in meditation, basically, right? At that point, interacting with people in a certain way and observing yourself. Many times, I've noticed this in myself, is like, I'll have a conversation with a friend, and after a certain time, I realize, oh boy, I shouldn't have said that. So that is an observation based on the philosophical understanding of all this literature. Like, oh, maybe I should have gone differently about that. Now, what can I do about it? I can apologize and all that stuff, but really, that apology can be futile. But my goal is that gap that exists between the action and where I feel the remorse comes closer. While I am in the action, I realize, oh, this is going to cause me remorse. So let me watch it, right? I don't want to create this wrong thing, not because I'm going to get some benefit from that other person. No, it is about my own mind. It is impacting my mind, right? So anyways, I think I covered Mona's question, Jyoti's question, I think to some extent Kevin's question. Yeah, Jyoti, go ahead. Your turn. You're muted, I think. You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So my question was essentially what Mona was saying, when Buddha has learned all these things, but then he goes back to the village. So when I was working, I'm retired now, so the situation is different. My Eastern mind was with the Western mind. My Eastern mind was, let it go. It's not a win-win situation. If you lose, that's okay. So the Western mind was saying, oh, it's good. Jyoti has a laid-back approach. Let's give Jyoti the worst of worst, because she doesn't seem to care. It was not that I didn't care. I cared very much. I wanted to be equally divvied up. But those people, everything, it was like a question of life and death with them. For me, it was like, hey, listen, I got some extra work to do. What the heck? I'll do it. But then it became like a second nature with them, that Jyoti doesn't seem to mind it. Hey, Jyoti, do this too. So, you get a little tired of sometimes the Gita preachings, which I am. And, it's so much easier for me to do now while I'm retired, because I don't have any conflict anymore. So how do you resolve something like that? That you are great in your own throne, but when you go out, you know what I mean? Like people are taking advantage of you. You're saying,
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think I get your point there. I think one of the approaches is when you sign up to do an action, are you doing it? Are you doing that action as a way to avoid a conflict with that person, or are you doing that action because that is your true calling? Like the work that you got assigned by the person you said was Judy, right? You took the name Judy, isn't it?
No, I did not. I said well, and actually it turns out her name was Judy. What it was is that I was a school psychologist, and we are given certain amount of work to do. And they'll pick up the lighter load.
Oh, yeah.
And the heavier load would come to me. Well, to me, it was not, it was okay. It's a hard work. It was a little harder work than them.
Yeah.
I chose to do it. I said, that's okay. There were both reasons. There were two reasons. One was avoid the conflict. And second was, it really didn't mean that much to me. It was okay. It might be a little extra time for me to put in.
Yeah, but then they kept taking advantage of you.
They kept taking advantage. And a point did come at the end when I just had to put my foot down and I say, you know what? I have a limit too.
Absolutely. And I think that is, again, the Gita preaching does not preach you any sort of advice about ethical good or bad. So let me be very clear about it, right? So here Krishna is asking Arjuna to go chop off his brothers. He's very brutal about it. And he says, that is your action, call to action at this moment. So if you were happy when the tasks were assigned to you, and that was your inner calling and you did it, and at some point you realized, hey, you know what? This is it. You put your foot down and you say, Judy, I'm not doing this, right? I'm done, and that is it. But don't in everything you do, I think what I've learned is that if it is leaving any kind of impression on your mind, then you have to oh, I have swayed away from the path. If that action leaves you an impact on your mind, then you might want to think about maybe there should be a different approach. But if you honestly think that Judy is taking a wrong advantage of you, and if you said it, and as hard as it might sound to Judy, but from your point of view, it was not coming from any kind of hatred or anything. You were just overloaded and something was not right about the situation. You're bringing up to it, and be kind when you're telling to Judy that, hey, look, this is just not right. And I'm fine with you sending one or two cases every so often, but it feels like this is happening way too often. I'm here to help. And which you did the right thing. So that was your calling at that moment. But the fact that you carried it this long is something that I think you might want to forgive yourself, and that's okay.
That's what I was going to say. I let it simmer for so long,
yes,
until this person became habitual. And she didn't understand that. That was a sad part. That's what I say, the Eastern mind versus Western mind. She really did not understand that this is the goodness of my heart. It's not that you could just go on and on with it.
Or twice. I was telling Ocean earlier on. Yeah. Don't ever do anything out of the goodness of your heart. That is ego talking. Okay. Just think about it, right? So if you are doing something where, okay, Judy assigned a task to you, you accept it because maybe you have a downtime. And if you are really super busy, you say no. You don't do it because you want to impress upon Judy, right?
No. I think that's where we are wrong. I was not trying to impress her. I was trying to make her feel that, hey, this is not as bad as you think it is. It can be done. But don't make such a big deal about it. I'll do it. But then she misunderstood my intentions.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
No, I think you
Okay.
get the point. You get the point, right?
Yeah. Thank
And
you.
I think in general, when it comes to like, whenever you are getting to a sentence where say you are saying, I am helping you, that's ego talking. Because when you're helping, you want to realize, is it bringing happiness to me? Stay with the joy part of it. Don't bring I in that conversation. Now, if you don't want that joy, that's okay. You just completely come to Judy, say, look, I can't do this anymore. That's it. And don't let even the good dwell with you or the bad dwell with you in your mind.
Okay.
Both are bad.
Thank you. That is good. Yes, thank you.
Hey, Joseph, do you want to give Ahad a chance? Joseph?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Ahad, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So, thank you, Shashi, for the story. I really did find out the story, and it was very, very fun. I mean, I guess the priest is moving on a train, and it's like going to crazy. So, well, a very short change was there because the priest goes directly through the train to a person that is just like sitting on a pedestal, and the devil itself. Right? The priest doesn't meet the Socrates, the character. Is just meeting a devil. So that's how it went for us. So yeah, that was a part of the story. And as far as the meditation is concerned, I guess it's more and more. It's a good way to have a part of the reasoning and meditation. That's very, yeah, that's about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you run across that joke, you might want to paste that on our meetup page in the comment section, or if you have it ready, you can just put it here. But that it could be a funny, all these funny stories, they're quite enlightening.
That's part of the meaning, because we connect. It's not like good and evil together. It's like evil just like is on one sided, and then becomes good and evil in the circle. So good for as far as Bhagavad is concerned. But for us, it's more like when something is stomped upon, we just consider it just like evil, and then what you want to do is that we want to just condition all the way down. So it becomes like you are just like doing just good, and then it's right. Then it gets to the right point. So that's how it goes with. So I think the evil thing that's really the true meaning with good and evil, as far as I could interpret the text that I read.
I see. Okay, cool. Was there anything else? I think there's another comment you have there. Moment of truth. Everyone chooses the simple questions to do because questions. I don't know. I mean, do you want to say something about that, or you're done?
That was the same comment to the story that you told me. That was
okay. I see. Okay. All right. And DLJ asks a question. What is consciousness in this context? DLJ, you're there? You want to join here?
I'm here, yeah.
Hey, DLJ. So sorry, what's your name again? Should I just call you D, or I think you were here earlier too, yeah.
Yeah, I've been around. Yeah, DLJ is fine. That's what they call
DLJ.
me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think at one point, didn't you help me with the hosting process or something? Yeah. Okay, so
did he charge you?
Oh, that would be doing something purely for myself. I wouldn't do that. So you're using words like mind, intellect, and consciousness as separate things.
Yes.
So I'm hoping for some definitions if you can.
Okay, absolutely. Very good question. Yeah, very good question. In fact, I think further down, I think maybe it's the 7th or 8th chapter, I forget which one, there is a little more details around this topic, but yeah. So consciousness is something that is almost kind of, think of it as like electricity, right? For example, electricity, you turn on the switch, it flows through the wire and the bulb glows. The bulb is the mind, our intellect, our senses in our body. So consciousness is that life force, if you will, or the whole notion of consciousness is what helps us be that I. The notion of I am, I think, I am doing this, I am talking, I listen to what DLJ is saying, DLJ is listening to what I am saying, right? So that whole thing, we are in this ocean of consciousness, if you will, right? The consciousness is getting kind of different type of personalities through our mind and senses. So our eyes become eyes because of that notion of consciousness sitting behind there, and our eyes can actually, the pictures that are coming in are making sense. I can see DLJ there, I can see other people, Jason and everybody, right? So I can distinguish and stuff like that. Otherwise, pictures are just dead by themselves, right? But there is a consciousness gives us that thing to interpret all of this stuff. Mind and intellect, if you will, is one of the ways to interpret mind is the closest thing that exists to our senses. So what I'm seeing through my eye, the very first filter is the mind. So mind has some notions about DLJ or Jason or other people or this laptop. So those notions are either good or bad, right? Mind wants to immediately categorize them. Oh, this is a good experience, or this is a bad experience, right? So that now intellect is almost kind of a collection of, if you will, past memory, all the learnings that you have had so far, that is a collection of that. And intelligence, if you will, intelligence is a bit more larger scope of things where you have the ability to learn. Intellect is a collection of knowledge so far in your lifespan. And that could be your memories also, right? About a person, about an action, about certain connotations, social conditioning, everything will fall in that bucket. So now as you can see, right, our eye looks at an object, mind puts that filter on. Now intellect is going to put yet another filter based on the past history. And that past history is going to be either abused or you do something good with it, right? Again, you come from a very selfish perspective. And you say, hey, like, I'm trying to protect my I-ness. My I-ness could be my body, my lifespan, or it could be also my family, my friends, whatever helps me define me, right? And so in Kathopanishad, one of the things that we did a while ago, we covered this thing where it's almost kind of like a chariot. And so the horses are the senses, eye, mouth, skin, touch, all of that stuff, right? So those are the horses. Imagine that, right? It's a cart. The reins are the mind. The guy who is controlling the reins is the intellect. And the owner of this whole thing, if you will, is the consciousness, right? So he's the king, or whoever, he's traveling in that cart. Now, if you let your horse decide what needs to happen with that cart, like if your sense says, oh, I see some pretty person there and all that, right? And I'm going to just like keep following that person, right? So now what has happened is the horse has taken over the cart and the whole cart is moving behind there. Now, what Vedanta says is that, you want to let the owner of the cart guide the decision-making process. So your action with the cart, if everything is balanced, it is going to go by what consciousness wants to do. Or another way, if you believe in God, it's what God wants to do on this planet, right? But if you don't want to believe in God, that's okay. It's about a larger purpose than these filters, this mind filter, the brain filter, the intellect filter, all of that, right? Those filters, how can we have them cause less effect on this cart that is getting driven? Otherwise, the cart, to this extent, it is just going into all kinds of directions because these horses are pulling it in random ways, right? I think you understand that, right? Now, a little bit?
Yeah, that was very useful. Yeah, I was writing things, I was mapping it onto the way I see it. So I think, without going into detail, I'm using the terminology in probably completely different way around, but you've got all the component parts that I wanted to see there. So
yeah.
Yeah,
There's also,
the consciousness is the thing that creates the I. I agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. You might also want to read Plato's. There's the fable about the cave, I think, right?
Yeah.
That's an interesting one. Anyways, so we have only a couple minutes left. Jason, do you want to say something? Sorry, we have Joseph. Do you want to say something? Hey, your audio is messed up. Joseph, your audio is messed up. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, your audio has some problem.
Yeah.
Sounds like a Dalek. He's been invaded by the Daleks.
That's Om, so.
Anyway, Joseph, you can come back again. Jason, do you want to say something?
Yeah, it's toward to the end. Thank you so much. And then I do want to mention about the interesting part I realized, because next week I'm going to talk about the Taoism. I'm preparing for next week to talk about Taoism.
Yes.
Zhuangzi's Taoism. And that chapter, I'm reading that one, and that the sentence talking about kind of meditation or sit straight and doing some Chinese medicine stuff. And a lot of the translator interpret as philosophy meaning, like going to the middle way, don't go too much. But when I read the chapter 6, especially on the verses 11, 12, 13, and 14, right? It basically, I believe Krishna is talking about physical. You have to sit on the spot and like a kusha grass, deer skin, and you have to sit straight your trunk, your head, your neck, and your eye on your nose, breathe, control your mind. I think he talked about physical thing, right? So
there is a way to interpret that. You have to understand the context of when this was presented. Way back when they didn't have cushions and sofas and trains and planes, right? So the whole idea is that you don't want to be sitting on a cold rock, because the meditation is for you to rise above your physical needs.
Yeah, my point is, I find out the interest for the Asian, especially Indian and the Chinese writing, because when they talk about this thing, they even care about physically how to do it, right? So we don't see Plato writing something, say you sit straight and you look at somewhere. They all talk about
The ritual.
It's interesting to insert this kind of physical activity. But we don't have to take literally, like I have to sit by the deer skin to sit by the cushy grass. No, we don't have to do that. But basically, they care about how your body do it. So I find out, because I prepare for the next week, and I find out this one. That's interesting, because they both care about how you physically do, when you do something.
And that's a problem, right? I mean, even in Bible, when Jesus says, the path is through me. The path is through me is taken very literally. And same thing Krishna says, dedicate your actions to me and you're going to be fine, right? So that is again taken by a lot of Hindus literally. And that is cause of so much trouble on this planet, right? That, hey, if you look, the Bible says this, if you don't believe in Jesus, you're going to hell, right? And same thing, a Hindu can say that to Muslim people, right? And this literalism is a problem. But once you peel the layers off, what Krishna is saying, what Jesus is saying, what Buddha is saying, what Muhammad is saying, they're very, very deeply, important things. Anyways, so yeah, thanks everyone. I guess thanks, Jyoti.
And you want to take a few minutes to talk about July 10th.
Yeah, so July 10th.
8, right?
What we can do is June 10th, you mean, right?
Yeah, June 10th. June 10th.
June 10th. So what we can do is, if you feel like your voice has been heard, then we can continue. But I'm open for one more of this kind of an open round discussion. If you feel like you want to talk a little more before we move to the next section. What do you guys think? Joseph, do you want to say something? What do you think about this idea of having another discussion, or do you feel like people have had their chance and then now we move on to the next chapters?
I like this discussion. I mean, I still had some things that I can, we can talk
more?
about.
You want one more?
We could do,
more?
Yeah, we could do
one more. We could do one more. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we could.
You want to make it as a discussion section on June 10th,
and we can this time just maybe focus on 4, 5, 6, and we sort of, I think, did 1 to 3, and obviously you can bring up 1 to 3. But I would also encourage in that. Please look at that video of Aurobindo. That video kind of walks you through this whole idea of how the worldly problems, you can take it personally and how it can impact you, and how you can change a bad situation into something that is a little more,
So how long was the video?
Oh, it's like
30 minutes.
30 minutes.
Okay, so how about like this? I'm going to post on the meetup. So
it's already in the invite. It's already
because I post on the multiple meetup group. So I'm going to put on the headline. So seems like nobody read it, watch it this time.
It was very deep. Yeah.
So I'm going to make it as a requirement, the ticket to watch it, and then we can focus on that, and let's shift the focus on chapter 4, 5, and 6, and for the next time.
Absolutely. Okay.
And bring your own question. I will rephrase the. I will add the ChatGPT to write another. So for the next 2 weeks from now. So yeah. Anyway, thank you, everyone, and thank you, Sashi. And then June 10th, in 2 weeks. So let's continue to discuss, and then next week, let's refresh, go back to the other side of the world and read.
Oh yeah, that's right.
You may find something just totally opposite, but sometimes something identical. That's up to you. How are you going to interpret? So I think it's good brain exercise by jumping from Indian, Chinese, Western, and then kind of like, good exercise on your brain. We may not have the identical conclusion, but, it's a good exercise, I think. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'll probably try to join as well your session, Jason. Sorry, I've just been.
No problem, and everybody have a busy life, and then so and then we will be happy, to see everyone. When you have a moment, join us, and then open your mind. So
thank you so much.
See you next week,
Bye-bye.
and then bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, Sash.